Grigorije Vajpan, právník. Co se bude v Rusku dít, až zmizí Vladimír Putin? Scénářů je víc. Pokud by ale převážil ten, který nahraje svobodným volbám, pak musí být demokraticky smýšlející část ruské společnosti připravena. I proto vznikl pod záštitou Centra na ochranu lidských práv Memorial projekt nazvaný 100 dní po Putinovi. V jeho rámci se psalo 5 právníků 1000stránkový manuál, který by měl usnadnit hladší transformaci z diktatury v demokracii. Na pozvání organizace Gulag.cz přicestoval do Česka i spoluautor projektu a vedoucí právník memoriálu Grigorije Vajpan, kterého teď vítám ve Spotlightu. Grigorije, welcome to Spotlight. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Your project is called 100 Days After Putin, but I would like to start with Vladimir Putin himself. What do you think are his weakest and strongest points at the moment?
Putin's strongest point definitely is his ability to sell the myth to Russians and to the world that there is no alternative to him. This is something that Putin has been selling to Russians for 25 years. The belief that other politicians are less capable than him or are not available. He has destroyed the opposition to make this idea easier to sell. But what we're now witnessing with the war in Ukraine is also Putin's ability to sell to the world the idea that it might even get worse in Russia if he's not in power. This makes Western powers, European countries in particular, trying to negotiate with him. That's his goal in mind. He wants to stay in power for as long as he can. He is waging the war of aggression in Ukraine for as long as he can, is his way of staying in power. In order to stay in power, one of the ways to enable this war is to convince outsiders that they should negotiate with him. His weakest point is the fact that his dictatorship is a highly personalistic one. It is all centered on one man. There are no centers of power in Russia. It's just about Putin. And that means that he's getting the information from people who are loyal to him, that the quality of information about things on the front line, about the state of the Russian economy, about what Russian people think and feel, is often misleading. We should all remember how the full-scale invasion of Ukraine started in February 2022. Putin believed he could be in Kiev, his troops could be in Kiev in 3 days. He felt he would win this war within a week, and he relied on poor intelligence. That's certainly his weakest point, that he is often not in touch with reality.
Mm-hmm. It's American Secret Services actually mentioned this week about, or last week, about the necessity of the war to be prolonged and continued, as you mentioned rightly, in order for Vladimir Putin to stay in power. But couldn't it be vice versa, that actually the war, which already cost Russian military and Russian society over 900,000 lives and wounded people, which I don't know if Russian society knows about even, that it could twist the whole dynamic and it could lead to his downfall?
It's hard to tell, but what we know for sure is that for Putin, this war is an end in itself. He is not fighting for some point at which he would say, that's what I want, I will stop here. What he realized, if anything, in the past 3.5 years of Russia's full-scale invasion is that this war actually helps him stay afloat domestically, that this war is a way of his political survival. So today, these days, we should all understand that Vladimir Putin means war. For as long as he stays in power, Russia will remain a threat to its neighbors and the rest of the world, unfortunately.
But he's 72 years old. We can call it an entering of twilight of his life. He has been in Russian politics for over 25 years. And I found a survey from last year. It was done or conducted by Radio Free Europe among 40 Russian experts. And according to the survey, 40% of experts believe that Putin will stay in power until he dies. 23% expect a palace coup. And just 3% of experts believe that Putin would leave voluntarily. But what about a possibility of coup from the public, from the people, not from the up, but from the bottom? Is that even a possibility, you think? And what is your private tip?
Right. So I think we should start with the idea that Russia is a very unpredictable country. And authoritarian regimes are also quite unpredictable in the way they begin, the way they continue, and the way they die. How many people did predict the Arab Spring that started in Tunisia at the end of 2010 and then spread all over the Arab world with dictators falling within a matter of days or weeks? Speaking of Russia particularly, how many experts did predict a military coup by Yevgeny Prigozhin, a top Russian mercenary in the summer of 2023? Zero. So when we discuss scenarios, it makes total sense to have an idea of what those are, but it is really hard to predict what will actually happen. But what we really know is that Russia after Putin is inevitable. It's just a matter of historic inevitability that one day he will no longer be in charge. We don't know how exactly that will happen, but we certainly know that there will be a Russia after Putin, and we as Russian civil society believe that we need to prepare for that moment already at this time.
And do you think that, I'm sorry to say it so bluntly, that Russian society is ready for, in your positive or optimistic scenario, a democratic transition, democracy as such, that the Russian society is not only healthy enough to receive it, but that people want it?
Right, so Russian society is for sure seriously ill because it made this war possible in the first place. However, what we also know from data that comes on the ground and comes from the ground in Russia is that Russian society is a deeply divided society. So often people outside of Russia do not really appreciate how much divided Russia is, with enormous differences in opinion spreading based on age, based on economic status, on social status. We also know that while there is a minority, a small minority of Russians that actively, enthusiastically support this war of aggression, 10 to 15% as head of a state-owned pollster agency once said, we also know that even in the circumstances where it is very dangerous for people to participate in polls, 18 to 20% of Russians consistently say they oppose this war, which means we have a deep division between people who are pro-war, who are against the war, and we also have a very problematic silent majority in the middle, people who do not have a say and who think they have no influence over Russia, over politics, and who have been told for decades to stay out of politics. And Putin has built a system, he has built a political and economic system in which so many people in Russia live in poverty. And then he bribed so many Russians to go to this war. So when it comes to speaking about Russia's future, it seems that there are ways to convince those Russians in the middle that they can live in a better country. They can live in a country that doesn't spend hundreds of millions of dollars every day on this war of aggression. And Russia is not a country that loses thousands of men every day on the front line. We have more than 200 people, 200,000 Russians who have been killed on the front line, just on the Russian side. But Russians do not know about this, because Russian propaganda would not tell them about those casualty figures.
And if they would find out?
Telling them the truth is one step towards change in Russia. This does not mean that Russia will change just because people know the truth, because Putin has built over the years, he has built a powerful apparatus of what we call state terror, an apparatus of persecution. We estimate, and it's in our study, the 100 Days After Putin project, we estimate that after 2012, if we just take the period from 2012 onwards, no less than 100,000 people have been subjected to political persecution in Russia. And right now, as we speak, more than 4,000 people are in Russian prisons on politically motivated charges. people who are political prisoners. And the way Putin has learned from autocrats who were before him, decades, years before him, is that these days you do not need to put in jail millions of people like Stalin did, right? Put millions of people in the gulag. Instead, with all the technology, with all the circulation of information, what matters is it's enough to put one person in jail so that 100 or 1,000 others are afraid to speak.
If we come to your project particularly, you write about first 100 days. Of course, the transition would take much longer, and still we are talking about the most optimistic scenario. What would be the biggest challenges? What do you think that has to really be done? Because the aim is free and fair election. What has to be done in those 100 days according to your plan?
Right. So indeed, we believe that the first objective, the primary objective that the Russian opposition and Russian civil society should have is to demand free and fair elections, because we know that if free and fair elections happen, then Russia's democratic opposition, Russian civil society, has a chance to prove to the Russian people, going back to your previous question, persuading the Russian people that Russia has a better path as a peaceful, prosperous, democratic country that is not at war with its neighbors. To do that, you will need at least three things to do as matters of priority. One, you would need to release political prisoners, people who are in prisons in Russia these days, but also make sure that people who are in exile, people like myself, can safely return to the country. That's number one, because once people are out of prisons or back in the country, they will be able to take part in political action. Second, you would need to abolish the repressive laws of Putin era that stifle public opinion, that make honest and open discussion about Russia's future impossible. There's a long list of those laws. In our project, we have identified 76 laws that need to be either repealed completely or amended. But among those are the notorious foreign agents law or undesirable organizations law. So, for example, I myself was designated a so-called foreign agent in Russia, which basically means an enemy of the state. I, for example, under the Russian legislation as it stands at the time, cannot run for office. I cannot be elected, even if I want to. So removing those restrictions on public debate and political participation is the second essential aspect. And the third one is the reboot of the electoral system. Right now, Russia's electoral system is based on fraud, and people who run it are subordinate to the Kremlin. It's part of the hierarchy of power that exists in Russia, and it makes free and fair elections impossible. So we need to reboot the system of electoral commissions to allow for international observers to make sure that once elections are in place, that it is the true will of the Russian people that can be established.
You were a member of voting committee, you told me before the interview, and you observed the rigging of votes yourself. Could you maybe describe it, how it works? Because many people here, especially young people, maybe cannot really imagine how can you rig votes in a country which, even though everybody knows it's not democratic, but still the elections look like they go according to all laws.
Right. So Putin's playbook includes a lot of lies and manipulations. And election fraud is one big thing that has kept Putin in power while creating this illusion of his legitimacy. And he has sold this successfully to the Russian people and to the rest of the world, who thinks that most Russians support Putin.
That's the result, yeah.
It's just not true, you know, especially these days, once we're going through this full-scale war of aggression that costs so much to Russia and Russians. But I was an election observer myself. When I saw election fraud at the polling station, I was just escorted. I was dragged out of the station by 2 policemen. I was doing the manual count of everybody who showed up, of all the voters who showed up at the polling station. There were 400 people who showed up throughout the day. After I was kicked out of that station, the next morning I saw the official results with 800 voters present, which means that the authorities doubled double the vote.
And couldn't those 400 people come simply after you were kicked out?
No, because the station closed by that time. It was just about it was just about counting the votes. There are various techniques that Russian authorities use to manipulate election results: ballot stuffing, tampering with voter records, rewriting election paper results. But at the end of the day, for example, when it comes to latest parliamentary elections that we had in 2021, the State Duma elections, there are ways to determine how much vote was fraudulent. There are statistical methods that help determine this, and according to independent experts, out of 28 million votes that the ruling party, the United Russia, got in 2021 elections, 13 to 17 million were fake votes. They were just stuffed. More than half of the votes that the pro-government party received were fake votes.